removed from that in terms of plausible plots that this wacky country can fall into. And that's the same thing with censorship. Like, they can use it against you. So, like, if you think you're using this to push back against right-wing extremism, they can use that to push back against progressive ideas that would genuinely benefit good people. Right. Genuinely benefit families, genuinely benefit people in need, genuinely benefit people in terms of healthcare and education. They can stop that.
Absolutely.
They can stop that if it's unprofitable with the same sort of tools.
Absolutely.
You gotta have free speech. It's the most important thing we have, and it's the one thing that separates us from everybody else. So when you have liberals and progressives that are screaming against removing people from platforms and stopping this and stopping that, understand what the fuck you're saying.
Yeah, and they don't, right? Yeah, I mean, like,
it's just convenience. It'll work against my enemies.
You talk about how they can use it to shut down things on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, we see reports in these files of government agencies sending lists of accounts that are accusing the United States of vaccine corruption. Now, what they're really talking about is pressuring foreign countries to not use generic vaccines, right? And that's a liberal issue. That's a progressive issue. Like, the progressives want generic vaccines to be available to poor countries. Okay, but you can use this tool to eliminate speech about that if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what they don't get, is that the significance is not who, the significance is the tool. Like, what is it capable of doing? Right. How easily is it employed? And how often is it used? And they don't focus on that. They focus on, it's Donald Trump, so therefore we want it. I mean, that's where their mistake is.
It's a very interesting and very nuanced conversation as to what should be allowed and what should not be allowed and why. And I think it's complex and it's ever changing, and it depends upon the tools that are involved, and it depends upon what are you talking about. And then it also depends upon, like, here's a big one that drives me nuts about this January 6th. Why is it okay for the FBI to have agents that incite people to go into the Capitol? Why is that okay? What benefit is that for society? Like, how much influence did they have? How much rabble-rousing influence did they have? How much coercion? I mean, why is that okay?
So this is another topic that is fascinating because it hasn't gotten a ton of press. But if you go back all the way to the early 70s, the CIA and the FBI got in a lot of trouble for various things. The CIA for assassination schemes involving people like Castro, the FBI for COINTELPRO and other programs, domestic surveillance. And they made changes after congressional hearings, the Church Committee, that basically said, the FBI, from now on, you have to have some kind of reason to be following somebody or investigating somebody. You have to have some kind of criminal predicate. And we want you mainly to be investigating cases. But after 9/11, they peeled all this back. There was a series of attorney general memos that essentially refashioned what the FBI does. And now they don't have to be doing crime fighting all the time. Now they can be doing basically 100% intelligence gathering all the time. They can be infiltrating groups for no reason at all, not to build cases, but just to get information. And so that's why they're there. They're in these groups. They're posted up outside of the homes of people they find suspicious, but they're not building cases. They're not investigating crimes. It's sort of like Minority Report. Right? It's pre-crime.
Yeah.
And the public has accepted this, without much trouble.
There's a little bit of pushback from people online, and then it goes away, where there's no real repercussions. Like the Governor Whitmer case.
Right.
Where there's 14 people involved in kidnapping her, and 12 of them are FBI informants.
Right.
Which is fucking bonkers. And then the two guys who are doing hard time, they're like, we thought it was fantasy. Like, we're idiots. We didn't know. Like, one of the guys literally said, I never planned on doing anything. To me, it was just fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean,
they're morons who get talked into this. And imagine you're getting talked into this by 12 people who turn out to be informants.
Right.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And why are there so many informants?
Yeah.
Like hanging around with
fucking head of the Proud Boys.
Right.
The head of the Proud Boys was
that
an
true?
informant.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
What's his name? Enrique Tarrio? Yeah, pull that up. He was a fucking informant. So this guy who is at the head of the Proud Boys, the guy who's organizing the things, he was an FBI informant.
Wow.
Amazing. You know the story of the Proud Boys? The real origin story?
No, I don't, actually.
Oh, my God. The origin story is amazing. The origin story, here we go. Proud Boys leader was prolific informer for law enforcement. Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys extremist group, has a past informer for federal and local law enforcement, repeatedly working undercover for investigators after he was arrested in 2012, according to a former prosecutor in a transcript of a 2014 federal court proceeding obtained by Reuters. So the Proud Boys started off as a joke on Anthony Cumia's radio show, where Gavin McGinnis, who was a regular guest, they made a joke about one of the guys who was an intern, and he was they were doing a joke about him being in a musical, and the musical like "Proud of My Boy," and they were singing a song like "We're the Proud Boys, proud of my boy," and they're like, "We're going to put together a group called the Proud Boys," and so they decided to have like this fake group of people, and to get into this group, they had to punch you in the arm, and you have to read off like remember different breakfast cereals, like it's all like really hilarious, stupid shit. But then Gavin's one of those guys that just like, he's a legitimate maniac, which was great when he was running Vice and not so great when he gets involved in extremist groups.
Right.
And so his idea was like, fuck these crazy Antifa people. We're going to develop our own group. We're going to go after them. We're going to fight them when we go to these, because they would show up at any time he had to do speeches, and they would protest him. He's like, we're going to beat the Proud Boys. We're going to show them. We're going to fight them. And I'm like, hey, like, that doesn't end well.
Right.
And obviously it ended terribly. And that's where the Proud Boys origin story come from.
That's amazing.
It came from the Anthony Cumia radio show. From Opie and Anthony. Anthony from Opie and Anthony. Dude, it's a joke. Like Anthony came on the podcast and told the